Taking a walk? Taking a walk? We were in another private one-on-one meeting and Mr. Straight to the Point was at it again. He even stood up from his chair to emphasize the point. Who do you think you are? Fabra snarled at me, the Inquisitor's displeasure at my antics written all over his face. The whole planet, nay, the whole subsector might be turned upside down should you get yourself hurt or killed out there. Lest you forget, there is a psychic beacon that might be tied to your well-being. Fabra looked more ragged than before. He must have been overworked during the days when I was in a coma. Utterly clueless on how to appease him, I resorted to cheating by expressing my regrets with a signature move only performable by girls, casting my sight down, holding both my hands up and extending only my index fingers so they touched each other. I am very sorry. I mumbled. Fabra continued to glare at me for a while before sitting back down, silently conceding there was not much he could do to punish me. There was a short moment of awkward silence before I spoke. It was just outside the monastery. I had no idea it could be dangerous. He scoffed and replied, "A lot has happened. After the heretical cults on the planet were exposed, all Imperial forces were mobilized to hunt them down, and in return the heretics retaliated where they could." Why were the heretics near the monastery gate? I asked. Nusquam is crawling with a sizable number of these previously hidden heretics. Those you met near the gate were the loose agents of these cults. As for what they have been doing here is a long story. Tell me first, how did you get out of the monastery without anyone noticing? He asked. I looked down again while replying, I had a dream, regained some memories and abilities that helped me to get out unnoticed but would rather not share them. He cast me a side glance. Keeping secrets now. So say the man who visited with a Psyker, a Hierophant and a Null who I never met before. Still feeling slightly betrayed by him showing up with hidden aces for my final clearance, I retorted for the sake of it but kept the spite out of my tone. Fair point. Surprisingly, Fabra conceded with a nod. He then took down his capoten, placed it on the table next to a delicate tea set before saying, both the Psyker and Hierophant were semi-retired while the boy was a recent addition. I would not have deployed them if there were other options. Sorry, but we had to be sure. I understand. I said with a nod. So what happened? How and why were you outside? He asked. I offered a half-truth. I woke up surrounded by monitoring devices with no one around. It was so strange I decided to take a walk and look around. It was only natural he did not fully buy my words. Fabra shot me a wary look before saying, the reason you were left alone was because of an incident. Do you have any recollection? I stared blankly at him in response. He let out a sigh before continuing, when we tried to contact your mind via psychic means for the second time, a manifestation of the Emperor appeared. Say what? What happened? I asked, shocked. Fabra did a double take on my reaction before continuing. According to testimonies, when my psychers failed to make any progress on contacting your mind, they attempted brute force and that triggered a psychic feedback. A misty form of the Emperor manifested, shimmering in holy light and all. It was just for a very short time, but he gave a warning about messing with you. Pausing only to verify my expression, the Inquisitor continued with a whisper. This happened right in the heart of a Sororitas monastery and was witnessed by a Palatine and a whole squad of Celestian sisters who later testified, swearing by the sanctity of their souls. You could only imagine, pardon my expression, the shitstorm that soon followed. What exactly did he say? I asked with all the seriousness I could muster. Care to take a guess? Fabra asked back. A traumatic scene flashed before my mind, heightening my pulse. Was it Dotia presence here is not authorized? His eyes widened for a fraction of a second, and he nodded grimly before looking into my eyes. My agents confided to me it was probably a protective measure or residual memory rather than a true manifestation. Was it though? I gulped, betting on, regardless, to hide my true feelings. No one must find out I might be a runaway from home. I returned his gaze without flinching and said, no comment. Please ask no further on this. Phaebrus held his gaze for a while longer before looking away. Anyway, the incident resulted in fierce debates that raged for a full day. In the end, the sisters accepted no arguments. Doing what they thought was their best to follow his decree, they evicted most of Cryptopher's personnel from the monastery and even severely restricted the presence of their own people around you except for routine inspections. Hence why you woke up alone. I was speechless. After a short while, the Inquisitor started to make himself a hot drink. You want one? He asked casually. Yes, please. I accepted his offer, figuring it might be unwise to refuse the gesture twice. While Phaebrus started on the drinks, I looked at his capoten on the table and noticed scorch marks that were not on it before. What happened? I asked while pointing at it. Those? Phaebrus answered while continuing to prepare our drinks. I was in the northern region and managed to locate some of the people who were partially responsible for ambushing us on board the Flame Raven a while back. They were less than cooperative upon confrontation. I watched as the Inquisitor distributed meticulously measured portions of brown decaf powder into 2 delicate ceramic teacups. He then poured boiling hot water from a space-age kettle into them before continuing his story. Naturally, we liquidated them. Do you want 1 or 2 servings of sugar? I trust your judgment. 1 it is. Cream. Yes, please. As Phaebrus continued to make our drinks, I could not help but notice his every action seemed so purposeful and precise. What is going on in the mind of such a person? Curious, I attempted to read his mind discreetly, but nothing was forthcoming. Either I was still new at this or he was trained and protected by the serious mental fortitude that Inquisitors were famous for. Alternatively, some protective measures might be present. What happened to the war? I asked Oi. About that, while the rebel army was defeated, their leader Cathan escaped and returned to his stronghold in the north, taking shelter behind fortresses and his people. Phaebrus said while passing me a steaming drink on a saucer. Careful, it is still hot. Thank you. I reflexively touched the cup with my index finger to test its temperature, but the feeling came off weird. While I could tell the cup was very hot, the spiking flash of pain that should have occurred on contact did not occur. Feeling curious, I put my whole palm on the cup and was rewarded only with a more intense version of the sensation. This temperature would have hurt for a human. While I mused over another newly discovered transhuman oddity, Phaebrus continued. A direct attack would lead to another drawn-out bloody affair with many forces involved, something we wanted to avoid with the threat of cults and renegade Astartes still present. Phaebrus then paused and took a sip from his drink, prompting me to do the same. It tasted like premium instant coffee with a twist. This might be the first time I properly consumed a drink after coming to this world. While my mind dwelled on such triviality, the Inquisitor continued his tale. Meanwhile, despite our best efforts to control information, tales and picked feeds of your performance was soon leaked and transmitted around the whole planet. Whoa! So much for wanting to keep as low profile to the public as possible. Wait, hold on. What was I thinking? They had already built a statue of me. I suddenly had a bad feeling of where this was going as Phaebrus spoke again. Obviously, the initial plan of keeping your presence a secret from the public was no longer feasible. Since the Holy Daughter prophecy had long been propagated on Nasquam, everyone quickly connected the dots. After some discussion, we decided to use the situation to our advantage by openly admitting that the prophecy had come to pass. As per our agreement, please remember your current status now. Oh yeah, that agreement. It had been a pivotal point of discussion back then at the fortress, to announce my true identity to the world or not. After a lengthy discussion between the pros and cons, it was decided to leave it in ambiguity. As Phaebrus put it, the weight of my status meant I could not afford being looked upon in a dodgy light by the higher powers, as that would bring unwanted complications in the future. On the other hand, to brandish my status as a mini Primarch without proper powers to back it up would be utterly foolish, bordering suicidal. All that was even before considering the extra layer of muddy issue of my personal relationship with the Emperor. So personally, I would like to delay this becoming public knowledge as long as possible. In the light of that, it was decided that if I became widely known to the populace during the war, our side would cover up my true identity with the declaration of an emerging imperial saint. Well, that solo live performance of mine just sealed that deal for good. Thinking about that, I pushed down the urge to facepalm. So, to the people in the upper echelons in the know, I am the Emperor's daughter. To the commoners, I would be the holy daughter, the prophesied imperial saint. That was the setup which hopefully bought us enough time to gain a proper footing. Luckily for us, this incident also provided the best cover-up story for your loss of memory. Blame it on the coma. Please remember that going forward. By the way, I only know this after the battle, but do you know how many versions of your prophecy are out there on Nusquam? He asked. Stumped, I shook my head. Phaebrus continued, there are about half a dozen versions of these prophecies on the planet. And guess what? As far as I can tell, none of them are true, and not even the ecclesiarchy knows the extent of the full story. Huh? Dumbfounded, I asked to confirm, wait, you are telling me the church did not know the full details? Phaebrus took another sip from his drink before answering. From what Canonis Diadonar had revealed to me, only the highest-ranking sororitas of the local order and the designated Dialogus law keeper were aware of the true prophecy. So even the church was kept out? Is that even possible? Phaebrus shrugged. Think about it, the whole Adepta Sororitas was founded upon the hubris of a single delusional man who almost destroyed the Imperium from within by hijacking religion. So despite serving as its military arm, the church itself rarely earned the sisters' full trust. Oh yeah, it did appear that way in the law. In fact, most imperial factions were more often than not portrayed as mired with internal power struggles and double-crossings all the time. So as far as most folks are concerned, legend has it there will come a time when this world and its region would face calamities beyond reckoning. In its darkest hour, a holy daughter of the Emperor, probably a living saint with connections to the sororitas, will appear to turn the tide of darkness. Other than that, all details are vague except for contradicting theories of origin. Bloody convenient if you asked me. He said and paused for a while before continuing. Anyway, since the northern region has a more conservative and religious population, we devised a narrative that worked against Cathan. A quick propaganda campaign was launched, blaming the ritual and breach incident on Cathan. We accused him of being used as a proxy by the great enemy, subsequently nearly damning the whole planet and grievously wounding their saint. With countless picked feeds and testimonies from troops on both sides, the narrative successfully turned most of the people against Cathan, severely eroding his local support until he was all but abandoned by his people. Even the previously silent ecclesiarchy had come out to formally condemn Cathan while acknowledging your status as a saint candidate. Cornered, Cathan holed up in the most secure part of his personal fortress. By the time our strike force breached the final defense, he was found dead in an apparent suicide. The rest of his faction unconditionally surrendered soon after. Phaebrus said before taking another swig from his cup. The images of Cathan's profile pictures surfaced in my mind. He was a handsome man with an air of aristocratic grace that would charm most ladies, hardly the type people would associate with an upstart planetary lord with a grisly end. With that, the uprising came to an abrupt end. We turned our focus on cleaning up and going after the hidden cults while your Magus friend busied himself with treasure digging. The cults, of course, would not take this lying down. Their agents retaliated where they could against exposed high-priority targets. He said while glaring at me again. I smiled awkwardly in return. So the civil war has ended. If you are interested in the final numbers of casualties, I have a report here, Phaebrus concluded while handing me a data slate. I took the device and glimpsed at the report, feeling a sense of numbness at the numbers. Why the long face? Phaebrus' words made me look up from the report. How did he? The poker face provided by, Regalis, should have been perfect. You can tell? I needed to know. The Inquisitor rewarded himself with another half-smirk. No, you took too long to read. I felt like doing another facepalm for giving that much away. Internally I lamented at my inexperience in dealing with a true professional. A sense of uneasiness informed me if I continued to operate carelessly and carried on like this, he might eventually figure out I was but a useless civilian on the inside. The thought of that gave me chills as I passed the device back to him. If your primary aim was to cut down casualties, it was a massive success. He said while putting the data slate away, put it this way, you managed to turn what should have been hundreds of thousands of casualties into localized episodes of tragedies. By the throne, I have seen industrial accidents resulting in more deaths. You are correct, I just dislike these unnecessary loss of human lives. I confessed with a nod. He gave me another glance before asking, can you elaborate on that? I was stunned by his question and silently cursed myself for slipping my tongue. Am I supposed to explain 21st century humanitarian ethics to an imperial inquisitor? No, I need to repackage my reason. After organizing my thoughts, I gave him an answer. This is a wanton waste of trained personnel. I despise wastage of precious resources. Faberus said nothing, but maintained his steely gaze on me for a moment before looking away and commenting, for your information, more than half of the casualties were caused by either friendly fire, field accidents or belated medical attention. So, that concludes the uprising. Done with the war report, Faberus finished his drink with a large gulp, prompting me to catch up with my own drink. While I drank in silence, Faberus switched topics. So, about what you did today at the monastery and the gate, you knew? About what? Taken totally out of my depth, I played the only card in hand, strategic ambiguity, and replied vaguely, which exact part were you referring to? Either about the state of ecclesiarchy on this planet or the implications of helping that man near the gate. He said with another shrug. Wait, implications? Let us start with the ecclesiarchy. You might have picked it up already, but I need you to be informed on this. Faberus said, somehow sounding more serious than before. I gulped, readied myself for whatever was to be revealed. For now, be wary of the church. Especially the cardinal. He whispered, going full conspiracy mode. But that was kinda expected. As an atheist in heart who had witnessed countless deeds of misguided religious folks, people who proclaimed to be representing an almighty enigmatic being with a straight face were not exactly on my most trustworthy list. As that thought crossed my mind, the Inquisitor whispered again. He might have something to do with the uprising. Covert investigations are underway. Eh? This sounds even more serious. Can you tell me more? I asked. The details are sketchy, but Cathan might have received secret blessings from the Cardinal to take over the planet. Now, the real question of whether he was compromised by chaos cults is not clear at this point. The sisters were wise to keep their distance from the church during this ordeal. This was not the first time I heard bad stuff about this cardinal. Understood. Then what about the man I helped at the gate? I switched topics. Faberus took out his data slate again and conjured a report. Citizen Rutaber Sermard, just discharged from the monastery infirmary. A retired general of the Planetary Defense Force, his children are listed in the surrendered ranks. For days he had been petitioning in front of the monastery for an official pardon for his children and the others. Due to his ranking before retirement, he had become a sort of de facto spokesperson for people in the same situation. Why here? It became the focal point once everyone knew you were being treated here. That statue outside? It was rushed out and delivered to the spot within a day by the devotees. The mere mention of that statue made me involuntarily cringe again while he continued. Tensions have been brewing between kin of the surrendered rebels like Rutaber and the others who could not forgive their actions. They insisted every person who participated in the uprising be punished with the harshest sentence possible for the demonic incursion and getting their prophesied saint, you, hurt. Faberus suddenly paused at the beeping of a Vox call. Speaking of getting you hurt, you should hear this. He said while putting a small device on the table and switched it on. Lord Faberus? A deep and strong man's voice burst forth. Speaking, Marshal. My lord, I just heard about the incident. On behalf of all the Arbits, I formally apologize for the actions of my subordinates. Is the Saint Candidate hurt in any way? By the Emperor's grace, not at all. It might have gotten ugly otherwise. There were a few hundred devotees at the scene plus a whole detachment of battle sisters that arrived soon after. For their own safety, your subordinates are temporarily being held inside the monastery. Thank the throne. Lord Thaborus, please let me know of your decision on how to deal with this. Kindly convey our deepest regret to the Saint Candidate. Very well, I will contact you later. Thaborus said and ended the conversation. That was the top Arbits here, Marshal Gallianus Svengul. You heard him, so what to do with the Arbits trooper who shot you? He asked casually. I was hit with the sudden implication that with but a word from me, someone could disappear forever, and that the old saying of everyone being equal before the law was forever a pipe dream. Thinking back on what happened, while at times that Arbits sure felt like an asshole, I was not sure if that warranted final judgment. Not liking the idea of deciding someone else's fate due to an interaction gone awry, I made up my mind. Please let the Marshal decide on his punishment. Is that so? Thaborus said. Despite his flat tone, he seemed a bit surprised I was not asking for anything heavier. Yes. By the way, what were the Arbits doing during the Civil War? I asked, seriously curious. Thaborus started to make himself more comfortable on the chair before replying. They were completely caught off guard by the whole event and were about to launch a series of suicidal operations to apprehend Cathan when I arrived. Since then, they had been operating under my directive, using their fortress as the main staging point. Fortress? I was about to ask before realizing the obvious, it was Fortress Endurance Sigma. The fact that I had stayed inside a supersized Arbits precinct fortress without realizing it made me facepalm internally again. The Inquisitor continued, back to the topic of Citizen Rutiba, your timely aid might be viewed upon as a direct stance to pardon the surrendered troops. I am sure the word is spreading on the street right now. I am also sure your actions have further tarnished the Church's dubious local reputation, considering your first appearance was with the devotees rather than the representatives of the Church. The sudden realization that everything I do might carry some symbolic weight dawned on me. I definitely went overboard with my stunt and have to be really careful about my actions in future. Thaborus concluded, now that you are being updated of the recent events, I would like to inform you that my promise to you was kept and it is time for you to fulfill yours. My mind played back my conversation with him on that fateful day when I promised him to look for a solution. It is about what to do with the soldiers that got too close to the demon. Yes, all 20,000 of them. Currently kept in a temporary tent city. 20,000? Thaborus waited a bit before asking. Am I supposed to be worried when the Holy Daughter is giving me a 1,000-yard stare? I replied to his taunt with a heavy-lidded stare, and he laughed. So, it is time for the newly anointed Saint Candidate to work on her third miracle. Thaborus said with another smirk. Third, not keeping score? First was your song that stopped the war, the banishment of the demon being the second. He replied without batting an eye and continued, the third would be on sorting out the troops who might be compromised by the breach. 20,000 people might be a small number in the grand scheme of things, but the political implications would be huge. He paused a bit before concluding. Should you succeed in this arduous task, it should put enough pressure on the Church to expedite their process and formally canonize you as a living saint, giving you the much-needed public political legitimacy to do a lot of things. I would appreciate it if you could look into this quickly. A hunch is telling me complications might arise if this is not resolved soon. Let's go then, I stood up and declared. Thaborus was startled for a second before regaining his composure. While I appreciate your enthusiasm, you are not going anywhere. Stay put here for at least a day or two for observation. In my professional opinion, dragging the Holy Daughter around after she just woke up from days of coma will result in the whole Adepta Sororitas revolting against me. Oh, right. My shoulders slumped. The Inquisitor continued, besides, Do you know anything about the vetting process against walk taint? I will arrange the psychers to brief you as part of their break. They are currently overworked as it is. I realized I would have to savor a short, precious breather before being swamped by whatever was thrown my way again. One last thing, about the insidious heretical cults. Faberus spoke again just as I thought we were done here. From what we uncovered, I believed they all hail to a single leader at the very top. This person, an arch-heretic with vast forbidden knowledge, should have been at the ritual site during the breach and might have survived. Didn't you mention only finding dead people at the site? I asked while recalling what was mentioned. Yes, more like chunks and debris of dead people, Faberus nodded. We later found a fresh set of footprints leading out of the site and disappearing into the wilderness. Since we could not find anything of significance on other human remains, I suspect this single survivor might be the arch-heretic. So, a very dangerous person might be on the loose, another +1 for my countless worries ahead. Someone was humming that song again. Malin Hadmeyer was on her break when she heard the familiar melody from somewhere in the sea of military tents. The young preacher was soon humming along when a voice called out to her. "Sister Preacher Malin. That song again?" Malin turned and saw a young man who wore a similar preacher's outfit like her own walking over. "Brother Preacher Xavier. How are things on your side?" Like herself, Xavier was one of many newly sanctioned preachers hastily recruited as part of a massive faith validation endeavor for the surrendered masses. "It surprised me, but the people here exhibit more faith than I expected," Xavier said with a satisfying nod. "I have the same observation. The emergence of a living saint must have rekindled their faith in the Emperor. She is still a saint candidate at the moment, right?" "For the moment that is true. But in my opinion, considering what we have witnessed, it would be outrageous if she doesn't qualify for her contributions." "Agreed," Xavier said before asking, "So any new development on her condition?" "Nothing," Malin said with a sigh before switching topics. "On other news, some linguistics experts have been cracking at the lyrics of that song. Most now agree that it was made up of multiple ancient Terran languages." "Really?" "For real, the current most trending topic was guessing its title. From what little they had translated, it's only Love and Beautiful World are leading the poll." Xavier smiled. "I can always count on you for any latest news on our mysterious savior. Another sermon session is coming up for me. I'll see you around." Malin watched as Xavier left, leaving her alone with that song in the air. That song, that mysterious song in ancient human tongues that stopped the war. The very song that was credited by many for saving their lives, and later that of the whole planet after the heretical scheme came to light. Everything felt so surreal. There was an old saying, there are centuries where nothing happens, and there are weeks where centuries happen. Malin was definitely living on that latter part as the centuries-old stability enjoyed by her world disappeared with the recent happenings. The Holy Daughter prophecy, a local legend with many variants that even Malin herself had deemed silly, had actually come to pass. Prompted by the recent earth-shattering events, Malin started doing her own research on the legend's history whenever she had time to spare. From what she was able to discover, records mentioning the Holy Daughter prophecy started appearing about 1,000 years ago, coinciding with the time the local minor sororitas order was established on the planet. Digging further, for the first time Malin noted the Adeptus Ministorum, commonly known as the Ecclesiarchy, or simply the Church, seemed to have a standing policy of localizing its teachings and subverting any local legends to become its own. When the Church encountered the Holy Daughter prophecy, it simply took it under its wings to be listed amongst the countless other imperial legends and prophecies. In a galaxy mired with endless war, unrest and despair, no one paid heed to another story that provided a glimmer of hope. Then it actually came to pass. A mysterious girl arrived and saved the planet from the brink of disaster. If the news was to be believed, she ended the largest battle of the Civil War while preventing massive casualties, narrowly averted Nusquam's damnation and possibly martyred herself to stop a rampaging demon. It all sounded so outlandish. Nusquam had not seen a major war in 300 years, let alone witnessing a demonic incursion. Personally, for Maylin, the notion that a living saint could have emerged and passed away before anyone noticed in this backwater imperial world was more outrageous than all the ridiculous events combined. It even made the young preacher wonder for a moment if her homeworld was abandoned by the God Emperor, to have their saint taken away so quickly. Triggered with a sense of melancholy, Maylin took out her data slate and conjured a picture on its display. It was a picture she had viewed countless times, but still struck her with a sense of awe whenever she laid her eyes on it. It was a picture of a Sororitas Rhino armored transport tank, and sticking out of its opened hatch was the breathtaking sight of a regal-looking girl glowing with a blinding halo. Illuminating a backdrop of a dark and rainy sky, the glowing girl held a sword in one hand, pointed forwards. Maylin recognized the sword to be the priceless relic of the local Sororitas order. She had only seen it once in person from a distance. In the picture, the relic sword was covered in bright blue flames and appeared slightly too large on the outstretched arm of its petite user. They said the picture was taken before the entire army in the front lines confronted a towering monstrosity that shook off enough firepower to level a city. Details on what happened were sketchy, but supposedly in the end the warp entity was banished and the girl greatly injured in the process. As the news spread, it soon became a point of public contention and an embarrassment for the church. People could not get over the fact that the church was silent and unaware that the Holy Daughter prophecy had come to pass while its cardinal was off-world on yet another dubious pilgrimage. The church generally had a standard approach for power struggles between the nobility for planetary governorship. Any such local disputes were tolerable as long as the winner maintained their loyalty to the Imperium and the God Emperor. However, recent events with the dark ritual and demonic incursion had led many to suspect that the uprising was being instigated by agents of the Great Enemy, leading the church to finally speak up. Breaking their silence, the ecclesiarchy quickly started a series of propaganda campaigns with their signature self-righteousness, demanding the harshest punishment possible by executing all the surrendered troops. However, their blunt proposal was rejected by the planetary governor Catalina von Cleus, and her stance was backed by the various powerful imperial factions that secured the victory. Even the church's own military arm, Order of the Shining Beacon of the Adepta Sororitas, which contributed a lot to the victory, objected to the proposal as the Holy Daughter herself had promised leniency for the surrendered troops. Then there was the Inquisition that appeared out of nowhere. The all-powerful branch of the Imperium took control of the situation and quoted in a statement saying, "This world can ill afford such a senseless loss of trained personnel in these trying times. Such actions could potentially aid the hidden enemy." Behind the scenes, the ecclesiarchy also suffered severe backlash from the pious population in the north who had a lot of family members within the surrendered ranks. Holding little true power in the local political landscape, the church's demands went nowhere. It was then the Inquisition reached out and requested aid for validating the integrity of faith for the surrendered troops. Desperate to prove its worth, the ecclesiarchy recruited many preachers for the task. Employed as part of the massive effort, Maylin had been working tirelessly on her assigned tasks for the past days. Between the sermons she was giving, Maylin had been doing intensive interview sessions with random individuals, looking for the slightest trace of heresy. The overall results had surprised her. Instead of the typical newsquamies laid-back attitude towards religion, most of the interviewees exhibited a renewed sense of faith. "The Emperor gave us a second chance. I felt reborn and have no intention of wasting it this time," one said. "We had all been fooled, can't wait to get back at the heretics," declared a soldier fuming with righteous fury. "I caught a faraway glimpse of the demon and need no further convincing. The Emperor is the only reason humanity still exists in this world," an officer confessed with a 1,000-yard stare. "I saw the light of the saint with my own eyes, preacher. She was at the forefront of the forces that came to vanquish the demon. The sight alone was worth 1,000 sermons. I wish you were there to see it yourself. Viewing it from a blurry picked feed did it no justice," a young trooper said to her. To witness a living saint doing the God Emperor's work in her lifetime. Oh, what she would do to witness such a sight. Maylin began daydreaming as she walked back to work when a cultured voice called out from behind, breaking her thoughts. Preacher Maylin? Yes? Maylin looked back and was surprised to see an individual she never expected to meet in this place. There at a short distance away was a man wearing the distinct garment of an ecclesiarchy deacon, flanked by 2 robed crusaders. Maylin blinked. The exquisite details on the deacon's garment, together with the glittering of his many magnificent ecclesiastical trinkets, informed her she was not seeing things. Why was a deacon directly addressing a lowly preacher? Then to Maylin's shock, instead of asking her to come forwards, the deacon with his bodyguards made a beeline for her. As they approached, the crusaders' sheer intimidating presence along with their towering storm shields kept everyone else at a respectable distance, scattering the crowd in their way. Having no idea what she had done to attract the personal attention of such a high-ranking individual, an ominous feeling descended on Maylin. Making the matter worse, she struggled to recall the name of the deacon in front of her. Maylin had never fancied her chance of meeting the few active deacons due to her lowly status, and thus never committed their details to memory. Esteemed deacon, it is such an honor. I did not expect to meet you in a place like this. Maylin formed the Aquila sign while bowing, silently praying for the man to not notice her skipping his name. Luckily for her, formality seemed to be the last thing on the man's mind. We go wherever the emperor's work demands, replied the deacon with a politician's smile before revealing the purpose of his visit. Maylin Hadmeyer, you have been summoned. Pardon? Summoned? Yes, you are to drop everything and come with me now. But my work here? Pay it no heed, arrangements have been made. May I inquire who exactly had summoned me? Maylin asked, her mind a messy blank with the sudden development. She looked at the deacon, begging for an answer. A hint of frustration flashed on the man's face for an instant before he indulged her curiosity. You are being summoned by the archdeacon himself. And so, Maylin soon found herself inside the Ministerum Grand Cathedral. After walking through many heavy doors leading to the second highest tower, Maylin entered an office with a mind-bogglingly luxurious interior. In the center of the office was a huge desk cut from a single slab of marble, its delicately carved surfaces decorated with many golden and platinum elements. Behind said desk sat the second most powerful religious figure on the planet, Archdeacon Rysene Venerin himself. Maylin remembered the man to be nearing 100 years old, yet he looked barely 50 and was still quite handsome with all the de-aging treatments. The archdeacon appeared to be deep in thought and merely nodded to acknowledge his visitors before signaling the others to leave with a wave. After her escorts bowed and left, Maylin quickly performed her greeting to the archdeacon and knelt. It took a while before Rysene broke the silence. Preacher Maylin, welcome and please rise. Tell me, have you dedicated your further studies to any of the Orthodox creeds yet? Upon hearing his words, Maylin rose but kept her head bowed respectfully. Venerable Archdeacon, to answer your question, I have yet to master my fundamental studies to decide on my dedication to a particular creed. The man behind the huge desk nodded before asking, do you know why you were summoned? Pardon my ignorance, Your Grace, I have no idea. Rysene stayed silent for a moment before saying, as of this morning, the saint candidate has awakened and seemed healthy. She even showed the emperor's light at the gate of the Sororitas monastery fortress in front of hundreds of devotees. The news has been suppressed for now, but not for long. Upon hearing the shocking development, Maylin involuntarily gasped and looked up. Venerable Archdeacon, that is marvelous news. The throne be praised. Did you get to speak to her? It took a second before the overly excited young preacher realized she had interrupted the archdeacon, so she quickly lowered her head again. To her relief, Rysene did not appear to be offended, instead he answered with a hint of excitement. Yes, while it was unfortunately short, I spoke with her. May I ask what was your impression of the saint candidate? Maylin asked, unable to contain her excitement. By the throne, she had an otherworldly spiritual presence that is difficult to define. Rysene replied before trailing off, lost in memory. It took a moment before he spoke again with a tone of wonder. How do I put it? She radiates warmth and calmness, but what really captivated me was her quiet confidence. Combining those qualities with her unearthly beauty, she reminded me of everything wonderful in this world. When she is around, I find it hard to take my attention off her. You will understand the moment you meet her in person. Maylin was slightly taken aback by the excessive statement. Surely the Archdeacon did not just confess to gawking at the Saint candidate. And why was she here again? Venerable Archdeacon, while that was most enlightening and I thank you for your insight, may I inquire about the purpose of my visit? Maylin asked. Realizing he might have gone overboard, Ricine awkwardly cleared his throat. Yes, the ecclesiarchy needs a representative operating beside the Saint candidate immediately. Due to the past few unfortunate blunders, we cannot afford to be excluded from her future actions. Since His Holiness is off-world, the task of selecting a representative falls to me. But alas, this is no simple matter. Naturally, almost everybody wants to work beside a saint candidate and get the chance to witness the God Emperor's miracles up close. The choice, however, is far from simple. Give any senior clergyman the position and all his rival peers would scream favoritism, plus it will be viewed as patronage to the individual's particular creed. Ricine explained with a sigh. Maylin stayed silent, not sure why she was hearing the Archdeacon complaining about the difficulties of his position. So for the sanity and stability of the Church, the representative in question needs to be freed from such burdens and preferably a female due to obvious reasons of propriety. When the Archdeacon finally finished his rambling, he gave Maylin a long thoughtful look before coming to a decision. This is where you come in, Preacher Maylin. Do you know that due to the presence of the Sororitas Order, there are but a handful of preachers in this world deemed suitable for this honor I am about to bestow onto you? Rejoice, you are very lucky. Maylin did not believe what she was hearing and felt her head going numb just by thinking about the conclusion of that logic train. She could not help but look up to see Archdeacon Ricine smiling somewhat self-deprecatingly as he slowly walked over to her. If I were any younger and in a suitable position, I would do anything for this. Junior Preacher Maylin Hadmeyer, heed your new duty, the Archdeacon said while handing her a delicate letter with an official Adeptus Ministorum seal. I, Ricine Venerin, Archdeacon of the Adeptus Ministorum on Nusquam, hereby officially assign you as the representative of the ecclesiarchy to the saint candidate. Praise the Lord, praise the God Emperor, our Saviour. Somewhere on Nusquam, a man awakened from his restless slumber and groaned. He found himself inside a shadowy room, his pitch-black surroundings broken only by the flickering of multiple monitor displays nearby. Every so often, the flickering streams on the displays temporarily lit up the room, illuminating a man with an impressive physique yet looking absolutely miserable. A long, unkempt beard hung from a face etched with lines of exhaustion. His skin was rough and weathered while his once piercing eyes constantly darted around wearily, as if searching for something. After failing to locate whatever horrors haunted his dreams, he put up a hand to shield his eyes from the flickering lights. Calming down slightly, the man groaned again as painful memories of his life's work burning flooded back to him. Everything had fallen apart. While he knew his supposed masters were fickle beings, he could not fathom what had transpired. He was close, so close to becoming one of them. The muffled pain on his head grew more pronounced, as it did every time the idea of losing his shot for ascendancy crossed his mind. Just days ago, his many decades of scheming and meticulous planning was coming to fruition. Even with the surprise activation of a psychic beacon that came out of nowhere, everything was on track. He was but a step away from his ascension, this close to achieving immortality and made eternal. His masters on the other side had promised, they even marked him out as one of their favored servants. The man had all he needed to reach the apex of existence. By his design, the dim-witted Imperials were tricked into fighting amongst themselves, and their deaths would be the sacrifice to fuel his ritual. From a hidden site secured with careful use of his vast resources, he and his followers created a breach in reality, opening up the planet for a demonic invasion. According to his plan, the summoned demons would assault the populace, further fueling the ritual to allow even more demons into reality, From there the cascading nature should do the rest. But then things started to go awry. The ongoing civil war between the governor and her half-brother was strangely not providing enough casualties to feed his ritual. Just as doubts began sinking in, something in the Sea of Souls answered his calls, something huge and powerful. It was so enormous that the breach expanded as it tore through the opening in spacetime and wriggled itself into reality. The thing he summoned, or the thing that had summoned itself, was beyond his understanding. Unlike any known servants of the Holy Great Four, what came through from the breach was at first a huge lump of shadow. Everyone was puzzled until it started to solidify, its shadowy form materializing into bones, sinews, muscles and more until eventually a towering black-winged demon rose into reality. A greater demon. They had summoned a greater demon on their first attempt. Seeing the magnificence of their success, everyone cheered. The man was ecstatic to say the least. While many questions lingered, like why the possession offerings were not taken and no one recognized what type of demon it was, the fact that it did not immediately attack meant the ritual worked as intended. With this magnificent being leading the charge, the downfall of this world was all but assured. While the cultists were ecstatic, the newly formed monstrosity that barely fit in the massive underground storage hall paid no attention to the puny mortals around it. It raised its muscular hand and observed it, as if tasting and experiencing its new existence. The man approached the imposing warp spawn to initiate communication. "Greetings, Great One. I am Grigiri Morvik, the one in charge of this congregation that brings forth your blessed existence. May I ask which of the Holy Great Four do thou hail from?" The thing slowly turned its head to face the cult leader, surprising everyone as it communicated via telepathy. "Plus the Holy Great Four? Take a guess then. Which of the Holy Four?" Plus it asked. Suddenly feeling pressured, Grigiri blinked and managed a response. I am totally lost, Great One. My apologies, but my studies seemed totally inadequate." Plus take a guess. Plus it insisted with a non-negotiable tone. The malicious bale lights in its eyes glowed with increasing intensity. Cornered, Grigiri thought for a moment before deciding this was a trick question. He gulped, betting it all on his intuition. "My answer is that thou do not hail from any of the Great Four." There was a short moment of silence before the warp monstrosity started to laugh, or it tried to. What came out was a poor imitation of laughter, a terrible bestial sound that was out of this world. Despite its eldritch nature, the inhuman sound was clearly laced with malevolence and mockery. The demon then silently raised its hand to the air where a colossal axe materialized. After grabbing the weapon, it announced, "Plus correct. For your reward, you shall be the last person I kill in this world. Plus." Then the massacre began. Grigiri found himself at the door of one of his many hideouts some time later. He had no recollection of how he arrived covered in bruises and wounds, but he remembered losing everything. That thing. That cursed thing he summoned disregarded his status as a marked one and took all from him. His many devout followers slaughtered, his precious artifact taken, and worst of all, his powers were stripped away. It had somehow denied him the connection to the ether and made him a normal man. Confused and scared out of his wits, Grigiri had been hiding in the hideout ever since. While he was keeping a tab on the outside world via the news feed, emotionally he was utterly devastated, barely coping with his fall from the peak of existence straight down to the gutters. Anyone else with a lesser mental fortitude would have gone insane, Grigiri was sure of that. The fact that he was still alive proved he was made of sterner stuff. Slightly reassured, Grigiri turned on his bed and his hand touched something wet. Jolting to his senses, he quickly switched on the lights and what he saw petrified him. On top of the pillows of his massive bed was a mess of blood and organic matter. It looked like a crime scene where someone's brain was blown off. Wait. Grigiri suddenly recalled what had really happened. He was not as stern as he imagined. Faced with an impossible scenario, after days of soul-shattering despair, in a moment of weakness he finally put a gun to his own head. Or did he imagine his suicide? Grigiri turned around and saw the used pistol on the bedside. Slowly he picked up the weapon and checked its ammunition count. Upon finding out a single shot was missing, he felt every strand of hair on him standing on their end. But how? Grigiriai was about to give in to insanity when an inhuman voice sounded in his head. Plus the ether is much bigger than you think. Plus. It was that thing. Realizing what was residing in him, Grigiriai screamed, something he had not done for more than a century. Before he could do anything else, his body froze, then a searing headache hit him as his memories were read by the entity. After a while, the thing inside him came to a conclusion. Plus my splinter and the target annihilated each other? So be it. Plus it said while slowly holding up the pistol and pointed it at Grigiriai's own head, seemingly about to finish what he had attempted once. No. Wait. Grigiriai screamed desperately but was unable to control his body. Plus I had kept my promise and made you whole once. Plus. Please. I beseech thee. I offer thee everything. Grigiriai begged as tears rolled down uncontrollably and he wetted himself. While he knew better than anyone about the futility of appeasing to such an entity, he had to try. Just when Grigiriai believed he would die for real this time, his gaze became fixated on something. There on one of the many flickering monitors was a news update with bold letterings, Saint Candidate awakened. The news flash was accompanied by a series of pictures, one of which depicted a glowing girl on top of a rhino tank hatch, her arms stretched out, holding a flaming blue sword that pointed forward. The thing inside Grigiriai went quiet, and then he felt a series of intense emotions bubbling over him. It started with flashes of anger mixed with amusement and then, fascination. The thing pondered for a moment before finally deciding on a course of action. Plus Grigiriai Morvik. I will make you an offer. Plus. Sometime later in another hidden location, a group of people were whispering their worries in a meeting room. It was a gloomy event, the somber atmosphere of the gathering amplified by the news featured on the wall-mounted main display. So, she has awakened. But our master is still missing. We need effective leadership now. Our brothers and sisters are being hunted on all fronts. Shouldn't we be appointing a new leader at this point? Who should it be? Surely not you? Careful of your tone. I, Stella Clamor, second in command to the master until his unfortunate disappearance, and the most qualified around here to lead. You wish to lead us? Over my dead body. As the meeting was heating up, there was a commotion at the door and a runner came in without knocking. Panting, the runner made an exciting announcement. Everyone. The master is back. What? Where is he? Before anyone could get a proper answer, a figure barged into the meeting room uninvited, a figure everyone here knew well. It was the missing leader Grigiriai himself, looking sharp and alert. Master. Rejoice, my disciples. The wait is over. Grigiriai said. What happened? Where were you this whole time, master? Grigiriai raised a palm to calm the gathering and said. There were setbacks, but I have returned. Master, what happened to you? Asked Stella, the person who had suggested electing a new leader just then. Brother Stella, why such a question? Grigiriai asked. You feel different. I can no longer sense your powers. The room of acolytes quieted down upon hearing one of them utter such a question. Grigiriai, however, did not immediately answer, instead his attention became fixated on the main display on the wall where another news about the Saint Candidate was streaming. It became so quiet one could hear a pin drop. Eventually Stella broke the silence. Master? Oh. Excuse me. But to answer you, yes, I still have my powers. Grigiriai turned his attention back to the gathering. In fact, I am stronger than ever. Allow me to demonstrate. He smiled and gestured with his hand as if forming a fist. In the next instant Stella screamed as his head was slowly crushed by an invisible force. He grabbed his aching cranium with both hands, wailed and fell over, rolling on the ground. Then Grigiriai's hand closed into a fist and Stella's head popped, spilling blood and brain matter everywhere. While the rest of his acolytes became petrified, Grigiri asked casually, anyone else wishes to usurp my position? None dared to reply. Good. Listen to what I have to say carefully. Grigiri said, the smile disappearing from his face. We have encountered setbacks, but the path forward is still open to us. Grigiri proclaimed, his eyes brimming with unnatural powers. Didn't my prediction of the Astronomican's light fading come to pass? I have since received further revelations from the ether. I tell you all now, no slaves of the corpse god, no governor, no inquisition, not even that upstart false saint can deny us our destiny. Gather our people, heed my instructions, and we shall take back what is rightfully ours. To the promised world. The cult leader concluded with his fist held high. The master is back. To the promised world. His followers cried out enthusiastically. Promised world. Promised world. Promised world.